There is an absolute universal truth that I know for sure, and it is simply this. When we suffer, this too will shape me. This is a universal, absolute, undeniable truth. When we suffer, it will shape us. We will become bitter, or we will become better. We will shut down, or we will open up. We will cling all the more tightly with white knuckles to our plans, our expectations, our assumptions about how things are supposed to go. Or we will begin to entertain the idea that there could be a new tomorrow, not the one that we had planned on, and that in that new tomorrow, we might actually be okay. This too will shape me. The only question left is how. I guarantee the people who have shaped you the most, who you most admire, who you most want to be like, I guarantee you they are people who have suffered, because nobody gets a free pass. And I guarantee you they are people who in the midst of that suffering, whether consciously or unconsciously, they made decisions to become a particular kind of person, to let the event shape them, to not try and go around it, but to allow themselves to go through it. And they came out the other side. And when people choose to live that way, to trust that this may be a Friday, but a Sunday is coming. This may feel like a death, but there's a resurrection coming. When people choose to live with that kind of trust, well, it changes everything. The great Abraham Joshua Heschel, just before he died in 1972, was being interviewed on NPR, and he was asked if he had something to say to young people, and he did. He said, "Above all, remember that the meaning of life is to live it as if it were a work of art. You're not a machine. When you're young, start working on this great work of art called your own existence." Earlier, we read a few lines of dialogue from a novel by Susan Howich, the 6th novel in this Starbridge series. The same Bishop Charles Ashworth, later on in the same novel, goes to visit a sculptor named Harriet March. And the bishop has his sort of systems of theology and the way in which the world operates. And she doesn't want anything to do with his church, Bible, God kind of worldview. What she knows from moving her hands in the clay to try and get the clay to shape in the form that she wants it to shape in. That's how she's come to believe that the world works. And so she launches into this sort of rant, speech, sermon, whatever it is, and she says to the bishop, she says, "But no matter how much the mess and distortion make you want to despair, you can't abandon the work because you're chained to the bloody thing. It's absolutely woven into your soul. And you know you can never rest until you've brought truth out of all the distortion and beauty out of all the mess. But it's agony, 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 while simultaneously being the most wonderful and rewarding experience in the world. And that's the creative process, which so few people understand. It involves an indestructible sort of fidelity, an insane sort of hope, an indescribable sort of, well, it's love, isn't it? There's no other word for it. And don't throw Mozart at me. I know he claimed his creative process was no more than a form of automatic writing, but the truth was he sweated and slaved and died young, giving birth to all that music. He poured himself out and suffered. That's the way it is. That's creation. You can't create without waste and mess and sheer, undiluted slog. Is that the best 3 words ever together? I was originally going to call this the sheer, undiluted slog tour, but I was like, no one would come to that. You can't create without pain. It's all part of the process. It's the nature of things. And then she reaches this sort of crescendo. So in the end, every major disaster, every tiny error, every wrong turning, every fragment of discarded clay, all the blood, sweat, and tears, everything has meaning. I give it meaning. I reuse, reshape, recast all that goes wrong so that in the end, nothing is wasted and nothing is without significance and nothing ceases to be precious to me. At the end of our time together, my hope and prayer for you is that if I were to ask you, is Harriet talking about sculpture or is she talking about life? My hope and prayer at the end of our time together is that your answer would be, yeah. Yeah. One more story. I was on vacation with my extended family, and we were at the beach, and it was raining because we live in Michigan. And I was standing next to this large window, watching the rain hit the deck in front of the window with my 3-year-old nephew. And he kept saying, stars, stars, stars. And then he would say it again, stars, stars, stars. And after a while, I turned to his mom, my sister-in-law, and I said to her, how come he keeps saying, stars, stars, stars? And she said, well, he thinks that when the raindrops hit the deck, for a split second, they make the shape of a star. And I thought, I'd never seen it that way before. May you, my brothers and sisters, may you see drops like stars. Grace and peace be with you. Thank you. Good night.